his war crimes trial at The Hague for the second day running. The proceedings have now been adjourned while the judges decide whether to allow an appeal by Taylor's legal team. His lawyers are angry that a defense document has been ruled inadmissible. Taylor denies 11 counts of war crimes and crimes against humanity during the Sierra Leone Civil War in the 1990s.
You know what this is about, their denial of our final brief? It's about simply this. You're not running this court, Mr. Taylor. We are. And we're going to show you who's in charge by rejecting your final brief. So this is about ego, not justice. And I really don't see that this kind of personalized politics has any part to play in a court of law.
U.S. aid to Pakistan is under threat over the detention of an American citizen who shot and killed 2 armed men. Relations between Islamabad and Washington have been strained since that incident took place in Lahore 2 weeks ago. And the U.S. State Department has again insisted that Raymond Davis has diplomatic immunity. Kamal Haidar reports.
A diplomatic row is brewing between Pakistan and the U.S. over the arrest of an American citizen. Raymond Davis is being held in the shooting deaths of 2 people in Lahore. He says they were trying to rob him at gunpoint. The U.S. Embassy asserts he's a diplomatic employee, and his arrest is a clear violation of the Vienna Convention. So far, Pakistan disagrees. Davis has already appeared in court and his case continues.
This U.S. diplomat gunned down 2 innocent civilians in broad daylight. We want to inquire what he was doing on the streets of Lahore with a pistol and all alone.
Events after the shooting added to the existing outrage in Pakistan. That's when a U.S. consulate vehicle drove the wrong way down a one-way street, killing a motorcyclist before leaving the scene. Tens of thousands of protesters have rallied in Lahore to demand justice. The U.S. sent a senior congressional delegation to demand that Islamabad free Davis. However, fearing a major backlash, the Pakistani government says it will let the court decide. That's not good enough for some U.S. lawmakers, who are now threatening to stop aid to Pakistan. The event is now creating a complex scenario, with Pakistan jeopardizing its relations with its largest provider of economic and military assistance, while the USA stands to alienate one of its major allies in the war next door in Afghanistan. Kamal Haider, Al Jazeera, Islamabad.
Well, speaking earlier, the State Department spokesperson P.J. Crowley denied that the incident had led to a deterioration in relations with Pakistan.
The reports that we have suspended all contacts with the Pakistani government is not true. We continue to have high-level contacts with both in Pakistan and here to be able to express to them the importance that we attach to resolving this issue in this case. And we'll use every opportunity in our engagement with the Pakistani government to reiterate that position.
The U.S. President, Barack Obama, is gearing up to send Congress his budget request for 2012. The Obama administration is wrestling with record budget deficits and a limping economy. And on Wednesday, the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve warned that current job growth is not good enough for a sustained recovery. John Terrett reports.
Mid-February and Time Washington focused on the 2012 budget. President Obama is going to send his spending request to Congress next week, hoping to appease Republicans seeking cuts with programs to boost the economy. On Wednesday, the head of the central bank, Ben Bernanke, testified before the newly Republican-controlled House Budget Committee about the state of the U.S. economy and the country's debt. He said there may be signs of optimism, but a lack of jobs growth is still a big problem.
Until we see a sustained period of stronger job creation, we cannot consider the recovery to be truly established.
The lack of jobs is hurting the president's approval ratings. A new poll shows President Obama gets low marks from Americans for the way he's dealing with the economy. The Gallup survey shows only 37% approve, while a whopping 60% disapprove. Global economic woes have their roots in the U.S. housing market, and bailing out 2 giants of the industry, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, cost U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars. As the 2012 budget details begin to leak, it's clear the Obama administration is set on cutting them loose so that never again will the government have to step in, as it did in the aftermath of the collapse in 2008-2009. The details are vague right now, but more is expected on Friday. Also on the budget radar, plans to help cash-strapped US states that have borrowed billions from the federal government to cover soaring unemployment benefits. The White House is planning to suspend their interest payments for the next 2 years to avoid states raising taxes on business. However, businesses may face sharply higher payroll taxes in 2014 to rebalance the books. Republicans call that a tax hike employers can't afford. They'll announce a program of cuts they'd like to see in the budget on Thursday. John Terrett, Al Jazeera, Washington.
The mobile phone giant Nokia is standing on a burning platform surrounded by a blazing fire of competition. Well, that's according to an internal memo from its new boss. Stephen Elop's message hits out at his company for lacking competitiveness and accountability, as well as what he calls a general series of misses. The Finnish company has been struggling to cope in the recent mobile phone market. It once had a 40% share, which has now slid to 31%, and that's in the last 2 years. Nokia has refused to comment on the leak. Still ahead, the far-reaching effects of Egypt's uprising. Find out why a trip on Hosni Mubarak's plane has led to a ban on foreign holidays for French ministers. And the latest WikiLeaks release leads to speculation on the state of Saudi Arabia's oil reserves. That's coming up.
As the dry condition extends over Amritsar, we'll find the right flavour to tempt your palate.
Very cold weather to come across a good part of North America. This wintry plunge is set to persist. We've got snow now making its way away from the central and southern plains. That will sweep its way through quite quickly, actually, as we go on through the course of Thursday. So brighter skies coming in behind, but boy, is it going to be cold. -4, a top temperature for New York, and -12 there for Ottawa. Struggling around freezing for DC, and we're looking at highs of just 9 degrees in Atlanta. About the only warmth I can offer you really is going to be down towards that southeastern corner, 26 there in Miami. Even Dallas will struggle to reach freezing. -2 could be the top temperature here on Thursday then. Some warmth too into the western side of the US, and notice some snow coming into BC, so western parts of Canada still staying very wintry once again. That snow pushing in over the higher ground. Come down into the Caribbean, and there's quite a rash of showers here. Some wetter weather just making its way across the Gulf of Mexico. Not too bad for the Greater Antilles, and even the Lesser Antilles I think should stay largely dry, but down towards the south, Trinidad and Tobago, maybe pushing as far north as Barbados, could see 1 or 2 sharp showers. Showers or longer spells of rain continue to drive their way into that western side of Europe, but on a southwesterly wind, it's mild. Temperatures getting up to around 12 degrees Celsius, but cold on the other side of Europe with Moscow at -13 degrees.
Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
The times change. The instruments evolve. The battlegrounds shift.
This is America! Our country!
But the international struggle continues.
He was murdered!
Uncompromising, hard-hitting investigations.
I can't get no justice from no one in Jamaica.
People and Power, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Welcome back to Top Story on Al Jazeera. Italian prosecutors are demanding Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi go on trial immediately. The call follows allegations he paid for sex with a 17-year-old Moroccan dancer and then used his political power to cover it up. Tension is running high between the U.S. and Pakistan after an American shot and killed 2 armed men he claimed were trying to rob him. Anti-U.S. protests have been underway in Lahore since the incident took place nearly 2 weeks ago. Pro-democracy protests have continued in Egypt, and demonstrations have been held outside the parliament. Mass strikes have also been taking place. All this as negotiators meet to discuss the future transition of power. But the French President Nicolas Sarkozy has banned members of his cabinet from holidaying abroad. It follows revelations that his prime minister and foreign minister went on free vacations in crisis-hit North African countries. Here's Rory Challens.
Prime Minister François Fillon would probably like to escape France at the moment. So too would Foreign Minister Michel Alliot-Marie. The problem is that's exactly what's got them both into trouble. Monsieur Fillon took his family on holiday to the Nile resort of Aswan, courtesy of Egypt's unpopular president Hosni Mubarak. And Madame Alliot-Marie is facing calls to resign for flying on a private plane to Tunisia for holidays. That plane owned by a businessman with alleged ties to ousted leader Ben Ali. With pictures like these coming daily from the Middle East, it was very bad timing for the politicians. The French media has had a field day, painting the two as cozying up to despots and autocrats.
How comes that the French foreign minister and the French prime minister were going to these countries at this very moment when, in the case of Tunisia, the repression and the revolt had already started, and at a time when one could imagine that the French diplomacy was aware that there was a risk of contagion.
But the Prime Minister insists he's done nothing wrong.
I have strictly respected all the rules related to private trips abroad for the Prime Minister, as well as the President of the Republic.
But even if no rules were broken, President Sarkozy knows this looks bad, and new guidelines have been issued.
For the holidays, from now on, members of the government will have to prioritise France. Invitations abroad will be authorised by the Prime Minister, in agreement with the diplomatic sections of the French presidency.
Some, though, might question the wisdom of putting the Prime Minister, one of the culprits here, in charge of preventing any further embarrassments. Rory Challens, Al Jazeera.
It seems a war of words has broken out between the Egyptian government and the Obama administration over how the crisis in Egypt is being handled. In an interview with the U.S. broadcaster PBS, the Egyptian foreign minister said that comments made by some U.S. officials were unhelpful, while the White House spokesman said that the Vice President Omar Suleiman's plans for a gradual change in the country don't go far enough. Let's get more and speak to Patty Culhane in Washington, D.C. Patty, so it seems that there's a lot of criticism going on between these two allies. What do we read into this?
You know, it definitely seems that we're seeing a